So welcome to the Dallas Film Podcast. My name is Tony Armour. I am the Dallas Film Commissioner, and we're excited to have Eric Baudour with us today. Eric, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys making the time for me. My name is Eric Baudour. I'm a producer formerly of Rooster Teeth in Austin, Texas, and also formerly of Mega64. Now, recently, by choice or by not, independent, making podcasts across many different platforms and on Patreon, etc. So the way my career has kind of gone has been jack of all trades, master of none, and that continues as I keep working in this field.
Feel free to pitch those Patreon and other outlets throughout if you want. We have, It doesn't matter to us. Go right ahead.
That's phenomenal. Well, we have a podcast. Hopefully I can, we'll see about the swearing. You can bleep this part out. We have a podcast originally called Face that now is transformed into the Regulation Podcast. You can find that at patreon.com/regulationpod. And Face Jam, our food related podcast, has been transformed into 100% Eat. You can find that on patreon.com/100% Eat. All spelled out. So easy to remember. That's where you can find me and everything that I'm doing right now as I deal with all the producing fun of lawyers, commissions, people who want to sell you things and want to sell you. That's been my day to day for months now at this point.
Well, and so for the audience, let's talk a little bit about that. So Rooster Teeth. First, tell us, you mentioned Rooster Teeth. What is/was Rooster Teeth, and what had been going on with it, and what is it now? Because the offices there were based at Austin Studios, which are the Austin Film Society studios that Richard Linklater started in Austin, correct?
That is correct. So Rooster Teeth started, I think, in 2003. And at that time, I was with a group they had formed called Mega64 out in San Diego, where I'm from. And so we met them going to conventions and everything. And then fast forward years later, Rooster Teeth, which is a company producing a lot of internet talk show content, almost. Video game machinima was very much their thing with Red versus Blue and stuff. They were looking for a producer. They asked if I was interested. I said yes. Moved my way out to Austin. That was in 2018. And then I'd been working there ever since. They had been bought by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers said, that's enough, and shut down in May of this year, on May 10th, which was my birthday. So very interesting day to shut that all down. But the tie to the Austin film, like the lot and everything, was our general manager, Jordan Levin, is on the advisory committee for Austin Film Society. So the Austin Film Commission, everything out here in Austin, Texas. So that's been the little tie there with how we're so tied into Austin. But now that Rooster Teeth is defunct, we had to take everything independent and everything. So I don't get to go on those studio lots as much anymore.
Well,
not anymore.
Yeah, that's so crazy because it's, so many companies, they're like, they want the big company to buy them out. Like, that's the goal. It's like, yay, I can imagine, like, we've been bought by Warner Brothers. Woohoo. Like, it was like the most amazing thing ever. Like, you can brag about it. Like, Warner Brothers, we're part of Warner Brothers, know? And then fast forward a little bit and you've got new leadership over there. And David Zaslav says, you know what? Not only Batgirl, but Rooster Teeth as well. She'll never see the light of day.
Yeah, it's sort of the way that it goes, right? I think that there's a lot of virtue and a lot of ability when you are a small company to move sort of deftly and do what you want to do. But what there's not a lot of that in it is money. And so when you, I think, do something, especially online for an extended period of time, and the money is, you're sort of struggling or you're not making as much money as you feel like your worth is there. I think that sort of, it's the selling out versus buying in, right? Like, these companies wanted to buy into Rooster Teeth, and it really worked out because as they were sort of getting bigger and everything, I was able to join. I wouldn't have been able to join the Rooster Teeth company otherwise if they hadn't been bought. So as much as I think it's very easy to look at what you're doing and consider, oh yeah, well, we can just stay this size forever, but with no growth, there leads to kind of like stagnation. The problem is when there is growth and it becomes hyper growth, and then you know, and when everything's up and to the right, at some point it's not. So you're sort of at the whim. So I think it's easy from the outside to say, well, why'd they do that? And it's like, well, maybe so they could continue doing it, because who knows if they would have lasted as long as they did, if not for Warner and the money coming in from them. I think it's it's interesting. It speaks not to just this particular company, but the industry in general on how this works. And so, and it's not unfamiliar to me, who many years ago, prior to literally being in this whole film world, when I really 20 plus years ago got kind of into this industry, I actually was in retail. I was a district manager for a retail company. Oh, wow.
And we were a small 30-store chain based in Florida, athletic. I'm not going to hopefully bore everybody with this tale, but athletic footwear, apparel, that kind of thing. We get bought by this big company, and this big company comes in. All of a sudden, we're at 200 stores. Like, we expanded really rapidly and brought in other stores. And, you know, I've got stores in Florida, New Orleans, and all over the place. And then within 2.5 years or something like that, they shut the whole thing down. They ran afoul of the IRS, did something wrong, and then all of a sudden, I get a severance package and I'm out of a job. But without that happening, I would have never then got into the film industry, basically.
Yeah, it's crazy how I think the film industry is a thing that people really strive to be a part of and want to do. And then how many of them that, I mean, I even personally know that just sort of went, I was doing this other thing, and then I just sort of found this thing, and now I'm doing this film thing. And it's like, wow, it's like, it feels very circusy, very like run away and join the circus sort of mentality sometimes to doing like a lot of this stuff. But it's fun because it takes all kinds, and you meet so many different kinds of people. I think I think it's evident when you talk to a producer, and then you talk to a gaffer, and then you talk to a sound guy, and then you talk to a cinematographer, and you just go, there's no way that any of you could do any of these other jobs. Like, you're role players to the nth degree. And I think that's why it works for guys probably like us, who are more producer focused and producer oriented, to do these kinds of roles.
And it's hard. Like, it is a hard industry. Like, you know, everybody starts out at some point in time, and they're like, I want to be George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and fill in the blank director, cinematographer, whatever. Like, that's what you want to do. And then, or you want to be an actor, and you start out as an actor, and then you transition into other things. But then you find things that you're actually good at that make a lot of sense within the industry, and then you kind of go down that path. So talk a little about like where you started. Like, how did you get started in the industry, and like what led you to sort of where you're at now?
Yeah. So I went to school. I'm a Southern California guy. I grew up in San Diego, and I went to Cal State Fullerton for radio, TV, film. And like everyone else, I'm going to be a writer. And I remember one day, in one lecture hall, one class, one of the former students, who is a writer on a TV show, came in to talk to the class and just sort of run everything down on, what it is to be a writer in Hollywood. They were on, I think it was like their first year doing something, working on a drama that they were writing. And he said, he's like, raise your hand if you want to be a writer. And I mean, it was the whole class. Everyone's, oh, me. Yeah. And he said, cool. Now keep your hand up if you're already writing every day. And I mean, almost everyone put their hand down. Yeah. And he went, so what do you think is going to change between now and when you graduate? What's different? If you're not writing every day, what makes you think you're going to write every day when you graduate, when you're done? And I just went, whoa, I'm not going to be a writer. Right. So I fell in with a group of friends who started in San Diego called Mega64, a very small production company of 3 guys that I went to high school with, that just were at the right place at the right time on the internet with the right kind of mentality. And I fell in with them and started producing their podcast, and was as well as working like actual jobs, like just where I worked at a zoo, and I worked at, I worked at an IT company, and like, you just kind of take every other job that you can. Yeah. But the passion project was doing the producing for like this podcast. And I found like, oh, I love doing this. Like, did not think that producing was something I cared about or wanted to do, and didn't even really, I think, understand what it meant. Like most people think it's sort of a nebulous term to be like, oh, I'm a producer. It's like, that's an easy thing to say at a convention. They just like, oh, I'm a producer. But when you really learn, like, you're coordinating, you're putting these things together. The way I look at it, and the way that I've been successful, has been, I'm trying to create the sandbox for talent to come in and play in. So that way they're at their best, So we're getting the best product out of this whole thing. So after falling in with them, again, Rooster Teeth was looking for a producer. So I came in and started doing that, launched their audio podcast sort of network with a few different shows, and some of them continued. And it's been a crazy ride, because it's not, I think you probably talked to a lot of people on the show, and everyone's ride is so different.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's hardly ever two stories that are the same.
No.
But I do think that I got lucky. I feel like when you graduate college, and the thing when everyone moves to Hollywood or whatever, and everyone talks about networking, you are in a unique position to have your network already there with your friends or people that that you went to school with, and everyone's learning their roles. And like, this guy's going to be a gaffer, but they know that they need a makeup artist, and your friend is a makeup artist, so you give them your number. Like, that's the networking that you fall into. And I feel like I got lucky with college. Everyone moved to LA, and I was back in San Diego, and then I fell in with this network of internet weirdos instead of Hollywood weirdos.
Yeah.
And that just, for me, it paid off. I got lucky. The coin flipped one time, and it came up heads for me and tails for other people. And that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, and it's always really interesting how that works out. Like, you just don't know like what the choice or the path is gonna take you down as you go. I actually turned down an internship with the Tampa Bay Devil Rays Major League Baseball baseball team in 2000. So this is 24 years ago. And so and I opted at that point. That's when I was starting to figure out, like, if I'm ever going to try and start getting going on this film thing, now is the time to do it. Mm-hmm. And really the main reason I turned it down is because it was unpaid, and it was like 40 hours a week unpaid. I was like, I got to make a living. Like, I can't work for you guys for free, as much as I'd like to. But if I would have taken that, I would probably still be working in professional sports today instead of film and television.
Definitely. The thing that I always, since I was in high school, I knew I wanted to do was work in a broadcast sort of medium.
Yeah.
But at the time, I graduated in 2004. I'm almost 40. And in 2002, when I decided, like, I want to work in like broadcast. I love the pace, and I love the feeling of like a live production or whatever that is. And not as like talent, but just as behind the scenes. I just assumed I'd work in TV news. I just assumed it would be a thing where I would learn how to do this stuff in school. I would learn broadcast through that. I would apply to every TV station. I would start in Des Moines, Iowa, and I would go to Michigan, and then down to Texas, and then out to, you know what I mean? Like, I just assumed that was, and I figured that was my career path.
Sure.
But the internet changed everything, everything for this stuff. And you're talking about an internship in like the early 2000s. That's a completely different world from an internship now for the exact same company.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Like, if you look at, I mean, obviously we all know what's happened to broadcast television and local news. Mm-hmm. Like, local news, like you were just saying, that used to be you started in a small market, you moved to another small market, to a little bit bigger market, and then you worked your way around until you were in a large enough market where you were making good enough money where you could just stay there and have a career and ride it out for however many more years until you retired. that was the path. That's the path, right? Yep. But now, like, nobody wants to work for, I don't even know why schools are teaching like journalism, like for broadcast journalism anymore, because it doesn't exist. Like, they're still teaching it when it's like teaching people how to be milkmen.
It's a great analogy. I mean, it's exactly what it is. 100%. It's just gone the way of the dinosaur, and it's unfortunate. But that's just the way things work and operate. Like, the broadcast show floor is not what it was in the 90s. Which is not what it was in the 80s or the 70s, and it's not what it was in the 50s. It's not like it just evolved and suddenly these things have changed. It's been evolving since it started. And I think it's really important to stay abreast of where it's at in your field and in the field of like your friends, of what they're doing. I have friends that are gaffers in New York, and, my uncle works in animation in LA, and it's always interesting to talk shop about this stuff and go like, oh man, I did not know that that's the stuff that you guys are dealing with in the industry over there. Mm-hmm. Here's what we're dealing with here. And so much changes so fast. so fast.
Well, and it's funny.
It makes your head spin.
Yeah, I feel like every single one of these episodes that we record, that the conversation always is turning towards what's changing and what's happening next and how things have changed. And it really just speaks to no matter who you are in the industry, whether you're an editor or a producer or an animation or a gaffer, all the things you just mentioned, we've interviewed all of those people, right? And every single one of them has talked about how things have changed and how it's not going to stop. And so really you just have to be flexible and be willing to, make moves when you need to.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I feel like you're uniquely positioned. You with the Dallas Film Commission and everything, and I'm sure you've seen so many changes and always interested in what's coming next or whatever. What do you feel like has been the biggest change in like the last decade that you've been dealing with, that you've seen, that like really feels like it stands out to you as like, I think nobody saw this coming, or like, everything changed after this thing happened?
That's really interesting. I'm trying to think of it from like a film commission perspective. Well, I think so much that, and it's been talked about a lot, is how distribution has changed.
Interesting.
With the way that we get our content that we're watching and how we watch it. Where if you were to look at Blu-ray and DVD sales numbers in 2015 and compare that to now, obviously streaming, we all know what streaming's done, and it's been talked about ad nauseum with where streaming is going and what it's done to the industry. But beyond that, what I think is really interesting is you see that shift and you see that change. I think we are circling back to the way that we consume content is really like it's the 1980s all over again.
Wow,
and
interesting.
Here's why I say that. Because of advertising video on demand, right? You look at, Freevee or Tubi or, any of these AVOD platforms. And so for anybody that's listening, AVOD, which is free, internet television, but you have to watch commercials. Because we went from 3 channels, and then Fox came along in the late 80s, and then you had 4 channels and maybe a UHF channel, but everything had commercials. All of a sudden, you can buy an entire box set of Buffy the Vampire Slayer on DVD and just watch the whole series with no commercials, right? Or you got a DVR, and now you can skip commercials. And so then Nielsen has to change the way that they do things and how they record television ratings, because now it's, ratings +3 or +7.
Yeah. +7, yeah.
Right? And so then all of a sudden, well, now the DVR, people start cutting cable, and you're just going everything straight to streaming, everything straight on demand when you want it. And so then that completely changes. And then now people, because there are too many options and you're paying every month for all these options, now people are just watching what is on Tubi, what's on free that I can watch, and I'll just watch commercials. And even Netflix, Amazon, Paramount Plus, all of them are now inserting commercials into their content. And so we've cycled literally right back around to 1980s television is where we're at.
That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. And you're right. I think that, like, piggybacking off of that, of like the abundance of choice, I think is the, talking about, okay, we know this stuff was streaming, the abundance of choice. I think there's a fatigue with people. Yeah. And everything is hyper curated to you. If you have a streaming, like a music streaming service or video streaming service or whatever, everything, here's what we think you like. Here's what we think you like. Here's what we think you like. We've lost out on channel surfing. Yeah. And channel surfing was such a great, like, I can sort of like chill and land on something that's already in media res. So I'm already in the middle of something. Yeah. I'll watch the last 10 minutes of this thing or whatever. I can't believe that more of these channels don't have always on options that you can just hop in the way Tubi and Freevee and all this stuff. That to me is the thing that people want more than anything else.
That's a
great. What's on right now? I don't want to think, because if I have to go through a million choices and here's 12 Oscar nominated movies, I feel like shit when I get to number 13 and I don't want to watch any of those 12. You know what I mean? Like, I'm choosing to watch something dumb, and that sucks. That feels bad. Well, but if it's already on, then I didn't do it. It's already on.
Yeah, you're just flipping through and you're like, I'll watch 10 minutes of American Gladiator, and then I'm going to watch Can't Buy Me Love, and then I'm going to watch.
There's so much to be said about channel surfing going away, and I feel like coming back. I think people are fatigued by the hyper curation that everything is like, what do you want all the time? This is for you. I think people just want to surf. I think people just want to surf.
Well, and you know what? It's why I don't go to the Cheesecake Factory, because I hate their menu.
Too many choices.
Why do you have so much?
Cut it in half.
What is in your kitchen? I want to know what's in the kitchen that you're able to make all of this. Like, the kitchen's not that big.
Avocado egg rolls and chocolate cheesecake? That can't come from the same place, guys. Come on.
No, I think it's all chicken, and they're just seasoning it in different ways. Make it look like
you're right.
Different.
100%.
75 different types of chicken that they're making and serving you. I can't do it. I just can't do the place. I'm like, come on. I want a menu that's one. I want to walk into the restaurant and they give you the one page menu that you just look at and be like, it's salmon or chicken or beef. I'll pick one of those. It's like a wedding.
That's it. We're done. We're done. No more thought. I'm thinking all day long. Don't make me think some more. Get me out of here. Let me lay down. Can I lay down at your restaurant? Just feed me cheesecake.
There's too much work to be done throughout the day that someone just tell me what. It's why when you go to a restaurant and somebody says, what's good on the menu? You ask the waiter, because you don't want to think. You don't want to think. You're like, just tell me what's good on the menu.
Yep, absolutely. But I think that I think it's just this hyper curation thing. I think you're talking about this rubber banding back to, it's these commercials and all this stuff. And you're totally right. I think a lot of this is cyclical. I think a lot of this is just going back to the thing that worked before, all these streaming services cutting out cable. And now it's just cable again.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with any of that, though, because I think that the things that are specialized and the stuff that you want that isn't from Netflix, Amazon, all that stuff is there. And you can curate your own thing. Like, people have, talking about podcasts, people have their regiment, and they're sort of like, Monday I have these 2 podcasts, and Tuesday is this one, and then Wednesday I don't have one, and then Thursday I do this. Like, having that schedule, I think, really helps people too, because that's something I think we miss from all the streaming and everything. Is everything's on demand, which is fine, but you don't have to wait for anything. Here's 13 episodes of the new show, and then you binge it all and you go, that was almost satisfying. What's the next thing? And I think when you have a schedule or a regiment for stuff that comes out weekly, like, again, podcasts, I think that helps people get a grip on their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and there's a reason that the streaming services have then shifted to that, where they'll be like, okay, it's the new Star Wars TV series it's on, and they're coming out on Wednesdays or whatever it is, and they're releasing 1 episode a week, because they don't want you to watch it all. They want you to go, and then the next one and the next one. Look what it did for Game of Thrones. Look how big Game of Thrones was, because you had to wait a whole week to get to the next episode after somebody died and you wanted to see what happened.
Dude, that was Lost.
Yeah.
Lost to me was that show. That's like the last TV show that I like gave myself to, where I'm like, I'm going to like really invest. I'm going to like put everything into this. And it was like, the schedule was infrequent. You had to go to a website like islostnewthisweek.com because they had no idea if it was. And then it was just like, all right, we got a week to pick all this apart and do all this stuff. And now when you tell people like, oh yeah, like Lost was like a show that I really liked, and they go like, oh, I watched it on DVD. I thought it sucked. It's like, right. If I watched it on DVD, I would think it sucked too. The show wasn't the part that I liked. Like Game of Thrones, what I liked was, oh my God, these 6 moments happened. And for the next week, we have water cooler talk.
Yeah.
We have so much to discuss and separate and break down. And I think there's a lack of that when you have 13 episodes of a show and people go, did you watch it all yet? And you go, no, I haven't watched all of Fallout yet. I don't have time. I don't have time.
Nobody in America worked for an entire week after the Red Wedding. It was
dude, it was all anybody talked about. It was crazy. It was crazy. Those are cultural touchstones I think in the US, I think a lot when there were less channels and less options and everything, and everyone watched MASH, right?
Yeah.
Like that, those cultural touchstones we still have every now and again, but it to me is way more interesting now with what hits the zeitgeist and what doesn't. When something is on a streaming service and it's supposed to be like this big thing and people just don't grab onto it. House of Dragon, right? The Game of Thrones show that's going to be this other Game of Thrones show. And
it's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's something where in the zeitgeist, you would think that people still pick up on it and then they just go, this wasn't good. I moved on. And it's like, oh no, that's like the worst thing that can happen to that streaming platform is people go, I don't really like this. It's like, oh no, that sucks for them.
Yeah. Just think of, as big as Stranger Things was, and I love that show, and I waited for each season and wanted to watch it, and I would spread it out. I would only allow myself to watch 1 episode a night.
Yeah.
To just excuse me, to give it a little more time as we progress through it. But imagine like that, the last episode of the last season of Stranger Things if it was being released on a weekly basis instead of being binged. And then it would be like that MASH effect, where everybody flushes the toilet in New York at the same time and shuts down the sewer system.
But that's exactly, I think that, again, this choice in everything, and we've seen the way that it's changed the industry from the inside, and the way that everyone's working or not working, and with like these shows and the less movies and blah, 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 all that stuff. Like from the inside, we've seen like a lot of the changes. And I think there's just not a lot of conversation on how it's changed culturally for people in day-to-day lives. I think so much of the fun of working in the industry is talking about the industry, because when you talk to these different people, it is like really different problems. But at the same time, you go like, isn't it all fucked? It's so crazy. It's just so nuts. But I think that there's a lack of, I think we'll see more societal sort of eyes on the last 15 years as media sort of changed the way we operated day to day than like really anything else. And I'm very curious to see what that looks like in 2040 when people have a look at it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like we were talking about growing up as a kid, you wanted to be, in broadcast television. Mm-hmm. Well, now, we wanted to start this Dallas film. I wanted my own TV show. I got my own TV show. That's basically that's very self-serving. As the Dallas Film Commissioner, I was like, what if I had my own television series?
Smart.
Smart. So we've just created this. And here we are. And we get guests from literally all over the country and the world to come on the show and talk, and it's amazing. And you don't need to go the old route anymore. No.
And it's money, right? Like everything goes back to money at like the root of all, especially like this industry. Everything is money. And, we're having to go independent now from Rooster Teeth, which was a nice umbrella to do all this stuff.
Let's segue back to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rooster Teeth was a great umbrella. I loved working there. Having a steady paycheck like it was any other job, but making podcasts and making studio productions and all this stuff was like, oh, wow, that's truly the best of both worlds. To not have to worry about where my next paycheck was coming from, to not have to uproot and take other work and figure out like, well, what's the next project I have to do?
Yeah.
But to be able to have this stability there was really phenomenal. And I really loved it. And now with this independence, it's great, but I'm trying to think of how to word this. Rooster Teeth had been around for so long. It was a big fish in a small pond. And then sort of the pond really grew and the fish sort of grew a little bit, but not as quickly. And then it quickly became an ocean. And there were a lot of fish in that ocean. And I think it doesn't benefit you in a way to be that size, that 2008 sort of 2015 model of like doing this stuff where you have all these employees and all this stuff. It just doesn't benefit you in the same way as being a small, deft, your own little production window thing where you can do it on your own with almost no expertise or knowledge and just sort of figure it out. As an example, so we're going independent and we have Patreons and we're doing all this stuff. Let's circle and talk about that. But how does that relate to like what happens to the content that already exists? The library, who owns that? How does that segue into what you're doing now and being able to take these shows independent? Like, how does that work? Because then keep going where you were going, but I think this will help. No, please. Yeah. No, that's great.
Help with that.
Yeah. The way that a lot of this content works with the separation from Rooster Teeth is a divestment of intellectual property, which is now owned because it's Rooster Teeth's. It's owned by Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. Because it's owned by Warner Brothers, there's dollar figures attached to all this stuff. I obviously can't speak about specifics for any of this stuff, but there are back catalogs that people will get, and there are back catalogs that people won't. And there are websites that will have the content on them until X day, and then they're gone. There are YouTube channels that we might have access to, or YouTube channels that other people who started this other one, they won't. it is at the behest of Jack Warner and his brothers, whether or not you get any of this.
From the grave, he's taking this channel.
That's it.
It's mine.
Because it's theirs.
Yeah.
It belongs to Warner Brothers. Yeah. And so you have to make the case and sort of state your stuff. What I think we're lucky with is that we are personality driven and we're personality focused. And that's what Rooster Teeth has always been. People don't subscribe for the stellar content that is TV show caliber. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes for a lot of the internet. People don't want something that is a TV show quality thing. They want to listen to some people talk like it's their friends. The joke I always make is we're making something for you to listen to while you're doing the dishes. And if we time it right, we've tricked you and your hands are wet and you can't fast forward through the ads. That is my ultimate goal is to trick you into listening to these ads. So that really is what it is. It's trying to figure out, do we need these back catalogs in order to be successful? Mm-hmm. Or are we going to gamble and say we don't need these things and we're going to strike out on our own to do this stuff? Because some people are and some people can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the trick, right? Because if you let's say it's YouTube, for example, like mm-hmm. you've got 200 episodes on YouTube of something, and now you have to start a new channel. Yep. And you have to get subscribers from zero mm-hmm. to whatever it takes with nothing else on there. The algorithm doesn't like that. Like as far as helping you get found organically. And so it's capturing the audience that you already have because you're personality mm-hmm. driven, like getting that word out on social media or whatever else. Is like, hey, here's the new channel we're starting. Subscribe, get on right away. Maybe you can get 100,000 people coming real fast. But if you don't, what if you end up with 1,000 and you're just starting with 1,000 and you got one video? Like what happens then?
That is what I've been worried about this whole time. I'm almost 40. I'm going to have to hustle like I'm 24 years old. Yeah. I'm going to have to make so much to do so much, because here's the thing. Speaking plainly, we got the IP for some of our stuff and we got lucky. We talked and we figured it out and it benefited both sides, etc. For some of our stuff. For some of our other stuff, we could not make it happen, and that's fine. That's the way it goes. And I will let you know soon how starting a gaming YouTube channel really feels in 2024, because I have a feeling it's bad, and I'm going to let you know when this comes out.
And it's a lot different. It's a lot different than 2015 when people were really just started with gaming, when it was new and fresh, and it's like gaming on YouTube. What? Why? Yep. Remember the jokes were, why would you watch somebody else play a video game?
Why? And now it's a gigantic industry. Yeah. It's a massive, massive, massive industry. And to have to start a new gaming channel in 2024 is very much a struggle that I'm going to have to see through. And that is the way that it is. But with all of the negative, I feel like being independent and doing this kind of thing, there's so much positive.
Yeah.
Even though there's no floor for us, there's no bottom. There's no minimum that we're making every month. Like we're going to Patreon and we're going to have ads that, for like these podcasts and everything, but there's no paycheck that comes in every week. Mm-hmm. We're just we're trying at it and we're going to see what that is. We don't know what the floor is. Could be zero, but because we're independent and all that stuff, that ceiling, I can't even see it. It's sky high. Well, and
there's that ability that it's like, if we work hard enough and use the skills that we know we've developed, we know we'll be successful. Mm-hmm. Like you have the skills and the talent and all the pieces to be successful. And now you're just relying on yourself, right? It is hard. It is hard to go back to that 24 hustle kind of thing where it's not the steady paycheck. It's why I became a film commissioner. It's a paycheck every It's like I didn't have to hustle for jobs as a producer. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll take that job. That sounds great.
Hell yeah.
But you have the skills to be able to do it. It's just going to take this. It's like, now I really got to work.
Now I really got to work, man. You know how much like coasting there is in a job? Yeah. There's so much coasting in a job.
Here at the Dallas, there's no coasting at the Dallas Film Commission. We never coast. We're working
what I'm talking about.
On all the time, just for anybody that's listening.
But it's a thing of like, I'm excited to do it. And I think what's sort of charged me up for it a little bit is a little strange. My wife, who is no interest making podcasts, didn't ask me how to do it, doesn't care, whatever, got with two of her friends, and they make a podcast now called Clutch My Pearls. They started a Patreon. One of them will read like a smut book, and they'll tell the other two about it or whatever. And that's like their thin premise to get them together or whatever. And so much personality. They're making money on Patreon.
I'll bet. Yeah. That's
crazy.
I guarantee that's successful. Just the concept right there is like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My girlfriend would listen to that.
That's what I'm saying. Like they just went, you know what? We're going to start a podcast. And I went, I can help you. I mean, if you need help. And they went, we're going to figure it out. My wife, who's never edited ever a day in her life, never had touched Audacity, Audition, Adobe Premiere, just learned how to do it. And I think that that's the thing that like really juiced me for a lot of this of like, oh man, like anyone can do this. Like, why can't we do this again? Why can't we go out there, strike it and just give it a shot? And that's the thing that I got really, 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 really excited to do after I saw her do it.
Yeah. And it's consistency, right? It's like if she does 10 episodes and stops, but if she just, as you know, like today, we're recording multiple episodes today so that I don't have to do it next week, and you're doing multiple in a day, and we'll stack these up and release them because you can't. It is so much if you were, and for us, like our full-time job is, bringing business to Dallas and doing what we can here. And so if it was making podcasts, that'd be something different. But you've got to structure it in a way that you make yourself successful by, working it correctly.
Yeah. And I think the biggest key to podcasts is consistency. If you miss a week, people forget about you. People skip. I mean, it's just like, oh yeah, we didn't do it this week. And it's like, people just go, all right, then I'm done. I don't need to listen. I have like a million other, you're spoiled for choice. Yeah. And my advice for everyone when they ask like, oh, I always want to I want to start a podcast. Should I do it? And I tell everyone, yes. I don't see a reason why you shouldn't. You have the equipment. Do it on your phone. Yeah. It's so easy to do. I said, but realize once you get that first one out of your system and you realize that you have to keep doing it and maybe the fun isn't always there, you're not going to make it to episode 4. And I think it's like it's like 95% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3. Because everyone wants to start one, but no one wants to continue one. It's
like working out. It's like working out, right? It's January, New Year's resolution time.
Yep.
That first 2 weeks in the gym, and then people forget about it, and it's the consistency. That's anything in life.
All it is.
Now we're everybody's dads talking to them about being consistent and working hard.
It's the way it goes.
But it's true. But it's all true.
It's absolutely true. When I was young and doing this, we would just sort of like, all right, we're just going to film some stuff and just put stuff out. And we're just going to try it. And we're just going to put, no one knew, you just sort of like try at it. And I think that there's a lot to be said about trying at it, because if you find something that works outside of the norm and it works for you, that's great. All I can do is give you the best advice that I've received, which is just be consistent with it. And you'll probably see some growth. It might not be the biggest growth in the world because not everyone is going to have the same success. That's just not how this works. Yeah. But if you can be consistent, then you can grow an audience, whether that's on, a podcast platform or something like Twitch where you're playing video games, or a YouTube channel where you're, knitting or whatever. It doesn't matter. You just have to be consistent.
Yeah. And it's when you get started, if you decide to change as you're going, it's like, you know what? The stuff we've been talking about doesn't work anymore. I just want to talk about something different. Well, as long as you're continuing to go, that audience more than likely will come along with you as you make that shift. I mean, not that you should change 12 different times on what your content is, but like you said, it's personality driven. Do they like listening to you? Yep. Do they like hearing the conversations that are happening between people? And if it's, we're a film podcast, but we're really kind of film adjacent. We talk about all kinds of random stuff on here, and it goes in different directions. And like you said early on, that's what people want to do. You're driving in your car, you're doing dishes, whatever else. You just want to be able to, see what's going on.
listen to a conversation and just kind of, hang out. And I think that's, you don't need to think for a little while. Just put on this thing and it's nice, like listening to a conversation.
Well, no one's thinking while they're listening to this one. That's for sure.
Yeah, hell yeah, that's right. Get them. When my wife was starting out with her podcast, they were on like the 4th episode and she's like, I don't know, the beginning of this one, we didn't even like get to like the book for so long because we were just like having fun talking. Do you think that's good? And I went, yeah, that's what people want.
Yeah.
People want the thin premise. All you need for a podcast is a thin premise to get you in the door together. And then like, why are we in a room? We're reading this book or whatever. Great. And now it's everything that happens around it. That's all you need. That's all this is.
Yeah.
There's a thin premise to get us together. And then we just sort of, it's just going in a circle, talking around.
The podcast is just an excuse for me to meet more people in the industry and have conversations. That's
smart. Genius. Genius move. That's what, see guys, that's what you got to be doing. You just have to work yourself up a ladder and go, I want my own show. And then everyone goes, oh, yes, sir. And then you go, yeah.
And people say yes. I have Austin.
Absolutely.
Austin and Thanya in our office here are awesome. They would, be like, find some cool guests. Like, I don't even give them suggestions anymore for the most part. They just go out and they find them and be like, who am I talking to this week? And they're like, this is who you're talking to. I was like, okay, that sounds fun. Let's go.
See, that's, it's great because it's like that. They have I have a friend who's a producer at PBS for Overheard with Evan Smith here in Austin. And he just interviews, public figures, celebrities, whoever. And it's my friend's job. He's a producer, like Austin here. This find someone. And so he's like, here's a list of people. They're like, great, the Indigo Girls. And it's like, all right, cool. Let's do that. I don't know. Sure.
Austin, can you get the Indigo Girls on the Dell?
Yeah, there you go. But then it turns out where he's just like, dude, we had this interview and it was so good. And like, when you have professionals talk about this stuff that they know, it's interesting. It's interesting to hear people who like half know what they're talking about talk about the stuff they half know. It's great. It's phenomenal.
This is a very meta episode where we're talking to a person who talks and we're talking about talking and what it's like to talk on a podcast.
That's it.
This is very circular. We're in a strange
I love it.
Twilight zone.
I love it. This is how people, because someone's going to hear this. There's going to be people that hear this and they just go, what is happening? There's going to be other people that hear this and they go, wow, it's really that easy. And it is. To get started, it is that easy. It quickly becomes not that easy. But to start doing this stuff and figuring these things out, very, very, very easy. I recommend everyone give it a shot because you never know if you find a passion for it, and you should do something that you're passionate about, and you don't have to make it your job. It could just be a hobby. Sometimes hobbies are fine.
I want every 12-year-old in America to start their own podcast and just run with it.
That's what I'm saying. That's cool. We got to know about Fortnite skins. Where else are you going to learn about that? You got to learn about it somewhere. That's what I'm saying.
Well, before we wrap this up, talk about, you're freelance, you're putting these things together. You've got new podcasts and shows you're developing on all the different platforms. What are you most excited for next? I mean, we've talked about how you're excited just to try all of this new stuff. But is there one particular thing? You mentioned a few different shows at the beginning. Any one of those particular?
So Regulation Podcast, I'm very excited to take independent. We've been so successful with that show that I'm really excited to see what we can do with when we're making our own schedule and putting out stuff that we want to be doing the whole time and not be beholden to. And I don't think we were ever super beholden to like trying to fit into like a mold, but to be truly moldless and go forward and figure out a path of our own is very, very, very exciting.
Is there a theme to Regulation Podcast, or is there
I wish I could tell you. It is three guys. It's Jeff Ramsey, Gavin Free, and Andrew Panton. And these guys have been friends for a very long time. Jeff was one of the guys who started Rooster Teeth. Gavin is a guy who worked there and created Slow-Mo Guys on YouTube. And then Andrew Panton is a friend of theirs who's very like video game focused and everything. And it really is watching, it's like putting three ferrets sort of like into a tub together and watching them sort of like spin each other up and then opening the lid and then watching ferrets just kind of like go wild. It really is. It takes us in all kinds of different directions where, for example, one time Jeff was like, I found out that the way they used to log and timber in the Pacific Northwest was one guy would go 6 miles ahead, dig a hole, start a fire, and then cook beans in the bean hole. And then the loggers would eventually join, and then the beans would be ready for them. And then the guy who made the bean hole would just go up like another 6 miles and do it again. And he's like, we need to do bean hole beans. So we went in his backyard and we dug a hole. We got tools and we dug a hole and we made a bean hole. Here's an idea. We're going to execute on it. That is what I'm excited about with Regulation Podcast. Very, very strange. Very fun. But with 100% Eat, we review fast food restaurants, limited time stuff. Now we'll be able to sort of not have to be so limited time and everything.
Yeah.
That's one where that is definitely me getting together with a couple of my friends and we're just hammering Burger King for half an hour and going, let me ask you, did you grow up with Burger King?
Of course. There was a Burger King literally 1 block away from my house.
Okay.
Right on the corner.
Do you like Burger King now?
So I'm going to make a little admission here.
Okay.
I have not eaten Burger King, McDonald's, Taco Bell, or Wendy's since 1996.
Wow. That's awesome. And that's so cool.
And it's a random story. Please. I guess there's no time limit. We can just keep talking, so it doesn't matter.
You can do it.
We can just keep going. There's no time limit on this. We don't have the network isn't saying you've got to be done at X time. I don't have a producer going.
What I'm saying, baby.
Or whatever.
We're independent.
That's right. So I was living in Florida, Clearwater, Florida. My brother was moving down from Ohio, and he took a Greyhound bus. Like took him 2 days to get there, and he got there, and I'm like 20 whatever years old, and he's 20 whatever years old, and it was like, all right, picked him up from the Greyhound station. You hungry? Great, let's go to McDonald's. So go to McDonald's. I get 2 chicken sandwiches and some fries, and he gets whatever he gets. And I splurged. My little brother moved down, so I'm splurging. I'm buying a McDonald's, right? We go back, we eat it, and it made me like the sickest I've ever been in my entire life. I was horribly ill from the McDonald's chicken sandwiches. And at that point in my life, March of 1996, I remember the month. And it was like right in the middle of the month too. I was like, never again.
The Ides of March. It's the Ides of March.
Never again.
You must beware.
And so, and so on top of McDonald's, I just lumped in the big 4. I just lumped them lumped them all together into one. And I was just like, never again. And then it got to the point where, we go out and you're doing whatever, and people are going to McDonald's or wherever, and I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, why not? Why not? And I would just quickly say, and then suddenly it was 10 years, and so then my friend's like, he hasn't had McDonald's in 10 years, and
you gotta keep it going.
So you got to keep it going.
Gotta keep it going.
Then it was 15. Then it was 20, and now I'm closing in on 30 years since I've had McDonald's. That's basically awesome.
That rules. That's so cool.
So I could never be a guest on your. I could never be a guest on your show.
But that's great. That's phenomenal. Because when we eat this stuff, it's again, the thin premise to get us together where it's just this wacky thing where we're reviewing the food, but it's hardly the topic of conversation. Of but when we run into people that'll say stuff like that, I'm so fascinated by it because I don't eat fast food outside of this podcast.
Right.
I make my own food. I don't go to Burger King. Yeah, I never do.
Yeah, a girl once said to me, I don't remember how many years in, I said that I didn't eat fast food and it's what I didn't eat. And she was like, what do you eat? I'm like, what do you mean, what do I eat? I eat food.
What
food.
What are you talking about? But it really paints a picture of certain people when you realize, wow, I didn't think you were the kind of person that eats fast food. And then they are, and you go, I think different. I don't mean to, but I think differently of you. That's great.
I don't want to see what your arteries look like. That's for sure.
Hell no. It's bad, dude. The thing was, Burger King is always the one that we hammer the hardest because it sucks. Like it's bad. Yeah. But people always who grew up with it, who still eat it, always say, no, it's good. I grew up with it. I like it. And you go, if
the winds would shift a certain way at where I grew up in Ohio, near the Franklin Park Mall in Toledo, Ohio, the scent of Burger King would come across the house because, they had the fryers and everything going and the char griller or whatever it is and the smoke coming out of the top of Burger King. And if it blows a certain way, you're only a block away, you can smell Burger King. And then you're like, you smell the fries, you're like, I could go for some fries. And you walk a block and you get some fries.
Easy. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Okay. I'm going to plug all my stuff here in just a second, but I want to ask you, because now I'm curious, if you had to break your fast of fast food,
right?
What would you choose?
What would I choose between, because it's really the big four. And you know what I don't eat either? I don't eat Chick-fil-A, and it's because I don't think it tastes good.
I totally understand.
I don't like it.
Completely understand.
Just don't like it. But what would I choose to break it?
Yep.
I might pick Wendy's.
Wow.
I
like that. Yeah. So much has changed at Wendy's.
Yeah.
You would not reckon the French fries are so different. The chicken, I would say, I know chicken sandwich did you wrong at McDonald's, but I recommend the spicy chicken sandwich. Good stuff.
Spicy
good stuff. That's the one.
And it might, if I were to do it, it might have to be the OG, the original that started it all. You know, McDonald's started it, so that's where you ended, right? Like on my deathbed, I'm dying anyways. I have terminal brain cancer. What do you want? Fries and a chicken sandwich from McDonald's.
In 1996,
yes.
I got sick off of this food, and as my last meal, I want to roll the dice.
One more time, and then the doctor rushes in. You would have lived, but you just had McDonald's, and that's what kills me. That's what finishes me off at that.
Sorry, you shouldn't have eaten chicken sandwiches from McDonald's. Oh!
As a 92-year-old, I'll be like, you know what? It's fine. I've had a good one.
Oh my God. Oh, dude. All right. Well, you can find me at theregulationpod.com, and that's also patreon.com/regulationpod. That's for the Regulation Podcast with myself, Gavin Free, Jeff Ramsey, Andrew Panton, and Nick Schwartz. And then you can also find me in my food review podcast with my friends Jordan Swears, Michael Jones, and also Nick Schwartz. Again, that's 100%pod.com, 100%eatpod.com. See, I nailed it that time. 100% eat. Watch this. And here's the edit. They took it all out. It's good now. 100%eat.com and patreon.com/100%eat. And that's where you can find us, 100% Eat Pod. Check it out there. Regulation Podcast. Check it out wherever you get podcasts. Very, very excited to go independent. And please, as many times as we said, we don't need you. I need you. And I'm sorry. And thank you. And I love you. See?
It'll all go in the show notes. It'll all be in the notes.
It's perfect. That's it. Yeah, scroll down. If you made it this far, you owe me a follow on one of these podcasts.
At least
you
one.
Fool. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. It was a lot of fun today, and good luck with all of everything.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Check out the Dallas Film Commission and everything they commission in film and other things. Well, hey, you know what? I'm going to eat a chicken sandwich in your honor. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. Let me know how it goes.